History never repeats, I tell myself before I go to sleep. There's a light shining in the dark, leading me on toward a change of heart. That's a Split Enz song from a couple of decades ago, burrowing into my brain. I know it's about a guy whose heart's been broken, reminding himself that history doesn't repeat. He can move on. But it came into my brain because I heard someone use that phrase, history never repeats, but it rhymes. And I heard that someone say that in reference to the Middle East and the conflict that's going on over there. And then this song came into my mind, and it's been burrowing into my brain. Maybe my unconscious prompting me to do this video, which is about history. History never repeats, I tell myself before I go to sleep. And so the history of the Middle East, I want to take a bit of a crack at, which is a bit of a daunting task, but I've been interested in it for a couple of decades, and I've learned a thing or two, and I want to share that. And the reason I want to share it is because at the moment, events are unfolding in real time over there. If you're not aware, Hamas terrorists attacked Israel and committed atrocities on a huge scale. And as I record this, Israel is retaliating and attacking Gaza Strip. Want to get their hostages back. And anyway, I don't want to go into what's happening now. The reason I want to go back in history is because we live in a world where what's happening now is happening on our screens, kind of unfolding in real time, and there's an excitation around that. And those very screens that we watch world events are the same screens that with one swipe we're watching Netflix, and another swipe we're playing some game. And I like to think that people can separate real reality with all of the impact on human beings from a game. But I think in terms of the chemicals in the brain, entertainment and news is losing its distinction and has been for some time, and there is that danger that we can get caught up in this surreal kind of world where it's like the gamification of horror is what it's been referred to, I heard recently. So yeah, I felt I wanted to take a step back from this here and now and look at a bit of history. I hope that's useful for you. Maybe history can give us perspective that might help us think about and talk about the present. So the history of the Middle East, and by the way, this is obviously a curated history. My own selective memory and biases are in play. So I've got that caveat out the way so that every 30 seconds I don't have to stop and say, oh, well, as far as I understand it. So I'll just go for it, and I'll reach back a few thousand years where that area that we call now Israel and Palestine, going back a few thousand years, it's a story of empires. Empires vying for control and swallowing each other up. Probably half a dozen empires until the establishment of Rome. It's the Roman Empire is another one of those empires, perhaps the most, in a way most known or talked about. And then the Roman Empire, Christianity is born there and very fast moves from a illegal small cult to a massive movement that the Greco-Romans embrace, sort of give up their polytheist view of many gods. And then the Muslims invade in the 7th century, and so sparking the Christian-Muslim conflict. Now, by the time you get to the 11th century, you've got huge Christian presence across Europe, and you've got the Crusades happen. So it's a state-sponsored and a church-sponsored crusade sending soldiers over to win back the Middle East. And then that rages for a while, and there's copious amounts of bloodshed. And then the Ottoman Empire come in, 14th century, around about. That's Ottoman, that's Turkish. So the Ottoman Empire there now rule for several hundred years. Now, around the 19th century, the Zionist movement, so I'm going to sort of bring the Jewish story into it here. Of course, the Jewish story goes back 1000 BC and more. All the stories of religion go back to the Abrahamic traditions, but that's probably a whole other video that I probably won't take on. They all have common ancestry. Children of Abraham, Christian, Jew, Muslim, Islam. So, they're children of the Abrahamic traditions, and children quarrel, right? So let me just come back to where I was. It's 19th century, and the Zionist movement, which is a part of the Jewish people. So the Zionists are part of the Jewish people who are very focused on reclaiming the Holy Land as a home for the Jews, as it once was. And that Zionist movement gains a lot of momentum in the 1800s. Now, and with that comes a lot of migration. So lots of Jews are coming into the area. And you've got lots of Arabs there as well. And they're both under Ottoman rule. World War I happens early in the 20th century. So in World War I, Great Britain says to the Arabs, hey, fight with us against the Turks, and you'll get some land back. So they do, and the Ottoman Empire are kicked out. And then you have both Arabs and Jews now liberated from the Ottomans, and they both now claim right of return. You've got the British who are in there as administrators. They say, we're going to stick around, and there's a use-by date for our administration, and let's make a plan to make this work. And that's when they first propose the coexistence of Israel and Palestine. It's controversial. Nothing's agreed upon. World War II happens. The Jewish people, of course, live through the atrocities of the Holocaust. More migration comes to the Holy Land after that. And there's a newly formed United Nations. There's a light shining in the dark, leading me on toward a change of hearts. The change of heart, the possibility of peace, the United Nations. This is not history repeating itself. This is kind of new. And the United Nations, most of the member countries recognize Israel. Not the Arabs don't recognize Israel, though. The British pull out in 1948. They say, we've done our time, our administration, over to you. And the fighting begins, or I should say continues. Israel and the Arab states against Israel and against each other at times. What happens there is they fight for territory. Britain's partition plan, which resurfaced after World War II, was not agreed to. So they do it the old-fashioned way and they go into fight, and Israel gains a significant amount of territory. Egypt gains the Gaza Strip. Jordan gains the West Bank. Jerusalem is split. Arab forces conquer Jerusalem, East Jerusalem. I'm going to fast forward through to 1956, another big moment in this story where Egypt blockade the Suez Canal, major shipping route. It's a huge geopolitical move. Israel can't get ships. So Israel retaliate. British come in, sort of arbitrate, and the French. There's a kind of settlement. The Suez Canal is opened again. But then a decade later, things have escalated again. Egypt start doing military maneuvers in the Sinai. That's the Gulf borders part of Israel. So they're doing military maneuvers. Egypt say to the United Nations peacekeeping force, "Out you go." So the peacekeeping force goes. Israel's going, okay. Egypt and the Arab states kind of make a very explicit coalition, military alliance, and then they close the Gulf of Aqaba, once again preventing ships approaching the port for Israel. So Israel do a preemptive strike in response to this. It's a 6-day war, it's called, and Israel win the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt. They also, at that stage, occupy the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. So they've got more territory now. The Zionists within, well, I talk about the Zionists as if they're one thing. Within the Zionists are actually very different conversations happening. Some of the Zionists say, great, we've now won the Gaza Strip, we've got the West Bank, let's get the settlements going. So more settlements come in, more migration comes in of the Jewish people into those areas. You've got Palestinians displaced, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, and displaced or in the Gaza Strip under Israeli rule in the West Bank as well. So it's a win for Israel, but it's a whole new level of Israel-Palestine conflict that ushered in. Now you've got other Zionists saying, actually, yes, we do want the Holy Land for Israel, but we also want to keep our people safe. So we could give back some of the territory we've won in exchange for peace. So again, you see this possibility of things being worked out, things put on the table. You've got the Arab states who, after that 6-day war, make a pact. I mean, it's an official agreement. The 3 no's. No peace with Israel, no recognition of Israel, no negotiation with Israel. And in 1973, they really deliver on that military pact, and the Arab coalition do a surprise attack on Israel on Yom Kippur, the holy day. Israel fight back, they regain ground, and then Israel do a counterattack. They push further into Egypt. They get within 100 kilometers of Cairo, capital of Egypt. They push into Syria. They get close to Damascus. This is 1973. By this stage, you've got America supporting Israel. You've got Russia supporting the Arab coalition. Russia, America, 1970s, they're superpowers. They're military, nuclear superpowers. So the tension's rising, and the potential ripple effects is causing anxiety throughout the world. But the darkest hour is sometimes before the dawn, and we get the Camp David Accords. Camp David's a place in America where the US administration broker peace talks. It's a landmark moment because Israel hands back the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt. Here you go. Land for peace. Egypt say very publicly, we recognize Israel. So this is not history repeating. This is new. This is the first time an Arab state is recognizing Israel. The Oslo Accords in 93, I think it is, that's another moment, because the Palestine Liberation Organization, which was established in Palestine and is fighting for Palestinian liberation and right of return, they sit down with Israel. Israel publicly, officially recognizes the Palestine Liberation Organization as legitimate leaders of Palestine, as opposed to some terrorist organization. And the Palestine Liberation Organization recognize Israel's right to exist. People sitting down, trying to work it out. Year 2000, they meet in Camp David again, Israel and Palestine, and the possibility of a two-state solution is on the table once again. And in 2005, Israel give back the Gaza Strip to Palestine. And they also dismantle 4 of the settlements in the West Bank. Now, this is a big moment, because some of those Jewish settlements, Israeli settlements in the Gaza, they've been there for decades. You've got people who were born there. This is my home. And now their own government tells them, gotta go home. So this is, land for peace. It's happening. Possibility of peace is there. Some people thought there might be civil war in Israel because there was differences of opinion about giving back land, right? But they did it, and there wasn't civil war, and Israel was united around that. Let's fast forward some more to the Oslo Accords. So this is 2020, when President Trump comes in and he does an interesting thing. Instead of focusing on Israel-Palestine, which is kind of in this sort of, it's just not getting resolved. The two-state solution just never is realized. And there's so much difference of opinion about what should happen. So Trump says, well, let's actually focus on some of the other Arab states, the more moderate ones, not the extremist ones. So they sit down with Bahrain, with United Emirates, with Morocco, and they broker a deal. And once again, you get Arab states, and Trump says, come and get a seat at the table. Israel's not going anywhere, and there's plenty to admire about it, so let's play reciprocity. And there's like a year of conversations that are made and deals that are made. So again, this is the possibility of change. And then more recently, and this is just this last year, Saudi Arabia has been in peace talks and getting closer to recognizing Israel and working with them around economic relations, and peace. And Saudi Arabia, that's pretty intense, because Saudi Arabia is the home of Mecca, right? Birthplace of Muhammad, birth of Islam. So for them to say, we recognize Israel, is a big thing, and it was getting close to that. And then Hamas, which is the kind of the militant extremists, thugs, I'm going to say. I'm back into a strong bias now. I won't go into this. You can watch my video that I made last week about that up here. But Hamas are seemingly not interested in peace, or not seemingly, actually, because they attacked and slaughtered and really set things back, because now a very ugly war is underway. And to say that Hamas did that with some kind of religious conviction or with the intent of liberating Palestine, I think that's a very distorted idea. And I say that not so much to condemn Hamas, but more though I think they're worthy of condemning. I say it more because I want to separate Hamas from the Palestine people, who have this rich history of displacement and longing and war, and the Palestine Liberation Organization showing true intent to sit down at the table and work things out. So Hamas is I want to separate it from that. It's that's distortion, and who knows, maybe we could love thy enemy and say that there's deep compassion for those people would be warranted as well, because how wounded would you have to be in your soul to do that kind of thing? But, even if we do think of that as a wounded people, it's a wound that's been taken to hell and inflicting hell on others. It's very different from a genuine, authentic and religious impulse to have the Palestinian people honoured. Anyway, I think I've gone on enough about this. I hope that it's useful in some way. My intent is to shed a light on something that can get very, very murky and confusing and overwhelming. And I hope you found that useful. And I hope that you see that the history of the Middle East is not just a history of violence, but actually is a history of deep feeling and poetry and possibility and people who want to work things out. That has been a part of that history and continues to this day as well. And it's a mess, and I don't know what's going to happen.